Thank
Okay.
All right, perfect. I'll restate for the recording. Today we're discussing aligning community development with the arts. This workshop was originally scheduled for March last week, but had a little bit of a scheduling hiccup, but we are all here today and with Arts Business Collaborative. So next slide, please. So again, we are here with ABC, with the lovely Kat Bloomfield, who is the founder and CEO of this 501c3, which is a technical assistance and research organization whose mission is to improve the quality of life for people of color involved in the arts and STEM. And you can take it away now, Kat.
Great. Thank you so much. So I want to just level set before we start so that we all are on the same page. We are, oh, I'm sorry. Carol, can you make sure that you add people as they come in? That would be great.
I see if you can transfer hosting somehow, because it's not letting me do anything.
Okay. Okay, I got it.
My apologies.
No problem. No problem. So yes, we just want to talk about first, let's get into some accessibility. We will be speaking with organizations of all sizes. So if you have resources, if you have RFPs, if you have ideas or anything, please definitely put that into the chat. We will be downloading the chat as well, so that we can improve our future handbook for the that will be dispersed in May. Also, there's a subtitles functionality at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we encourage you to engage with that if you are in need of those. If you are in need of those, I believe it's automatic, so it should translate as I speak. And then I will be pausing between points so that folks can sort of process and move through the presentation with me. It's just another way to sort of help with different kind of neurodiversities in that way. There'll also be a glossary of terms that is within the presentation so that folks are not just they're able to stay with me on some of the jargony kind of things about fundraising. So it will be more accessible to everyone. And then finally, we are going to have an agenda so that everybody knows how many slides are coming up, where we are in the presentation, and can plan accordingly. There will be a 5-minute break halfway through the presentation, so look forward to that in case you're eyeing the bathroom, because that would be me. And as I said, please do share resources. If you have any arts RFPs, please share that. We would be happy to send a follow-up email and share those resources as well with our networks. If you have the knowledge, please do share it. This is a place where all people's information and expertise is honored. So please do. There will be a fundraising handbook that we are releasing in May that will sort of encapsulate more of the items that we talk about in this presentation. And it'll be a soup to nuts, like how do you do foundation fundraising, corporate fundraising, individual fundraising, and then a lot of skills related to reading 990s and other sorts of things. So we'll talk about that more as we get through the presentation. So this is the agenda. This introduction, including this section, is 7 slides. We're going to be talking about why arts economic development is a thing, why it's important, and why you should know about it. We will be preparing to integrate the arts, to integrate arts funding into your existing fundraising processes, if you have them. And then we will do a 5-minute break. When we return, we'll be doing a CBDO business model deep dive. And then we will move on to a crash course in foundation grant seeking. That will be 15 slides. Then we'll wrap it up with some questions to consider. And then there will be some closing items that both ABC and SBS will share for next steps. And please do, throughout the presentation, put any questions in the chat. We have Carolyn who will help moderate and bring those questions to the fore. As we mentioned previously, ABC's mission is to improve the quality of life for people of color involved in STEAM, arts and STEM. We are specifically focused on 3 factors that harm creative and professional endeavors, which is access to capital, to networks, and to knowledge. And we have 2 programs that are currently active, which is what you're participating in now, Help Desk. This year, it will be in both the spring and the fall. And so we are doing webinars like this. There will be the opportunity to do one-on-one consulting. There is asynchronous learning via creative study, which we will send an email about this week. And there are capacity grants via our resource fund. Those are available if you signed up to, if you filled out our registration form, our help desk registration form that's on our website. And then we also have our Grassroots Action Project program, which is an incubator for movement organizations to help them develop the organizational capabilities to either be independent organizations or spin off as independent entities, or as semi-independent partners. And so we'll actually be talking more about what that looks like in a future presentation. I believe next week we have a fiscal sponsorship for movement organizing presentation that will shine some more light on that. Okay, next. We have tried to figure out how to get this this poll to work, but we are not favored by the technology gods. So what we're going to do is have this poll via the chat, and we'll be able to pull that information later and be able to follow up. So we would like to know how many of you have implemented the following kinds of arts programs or engagements: creative placemaking, street festivals, murals, artist outreach, historic preservation, or others. So please do write in the chat, and we will be able to gather that information and just do some level setting. So Tithe Design looks like they've done some creative placemaking. There's been the
Okay, I'm so sorry. My computer just like restarted out of nowhere. I don't know what was going on. I know. I was like freaking out.
just a reminder, if you come in, please just mute yourself so that we can stay on task. Thank you. Looks like there's been some historic preservation. People have implemented all of these programs. Wonderful. And then also, please do put your organization in your title. You can rename yourself. I'll be pulling you out and shouting you out. So yes, that's wonderful. Brooklyn Level Up has done artist outreach, historic preservation. Yeah, this is great. Lots of people have a lot of experience with doing this work, which is wonderful. We love to see it. And throughout the presentation, we will be highlighting some of those things. So stay tuned for that. So first, let's jump into why we need to care about arts economic development. In the summary document, or summary, I guess, blurb, I had made the case that that a quarter of New York State's contribution to the federal government's the federal government's budget is the arts and culture in New York City. And so let's like break that down. First of all, there were $32 billion in tax revenues for the federal government, with that specifically comes from the arts, which includes both creative businesses and income taxes for artists and creatives. If anybody, I'm not sure if anybody has come across this, but there are actually 13 of 50 revenue producing states, meaning they provide more money into the federal pot than they bring back in disbursements from the federal government. And those are New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Illinois, California, Minnesota, Washington, Colorado, New Hampshire, Utah, and Nevada. And if you think about what all of those have in common, they have large cities that are they have large cities that have really robust cultural production. And the New York City Arts Community pays for every person's federal and some amount of their state services in Pennsylvania. If you were to sort of go one-to-one, the income that comes in from the arts in New York and sort of look at the disbursement of per person, per capita of different states. So that's just something to sort of point out, that the arts community in New York City is incredibly important to the nation, and the ability for other states and cities to be able to have their roads taken care of and their social services and other things that we pay for with our tax dollars. So this is New York City does support the whole country. And then I also wanted to point out that the New York City spends $129.71 per capita on the arts, which is the second highest in the country, and that's 8.5 million New Yorkers. So there is the state has made a huge investment in the arts, in terms of the Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, arts business funding through Empire State Development, through SBS. There's so many agencies that have invested in the arts, and so it is also recognized by the city, the state, that the arts are important. And so you can also check out the fact that like the comptroller has identified the arts as critical to New York City. They have a creative economy dashboard, and so they itemize the different kinds of creative sector employment, and that's how we sort of get the impact of the income taxes through the comptroller's dashboard. So this is clickable. Once we share this presentation, you'll be able to click on this and go see it.
What size is best to upload the images?
Oop, it's going the wrong direction. Okay.
No, I mean like for Photoshop, like this is.
Once again, please mute if you enter. Great. So let's talk about one thing that we really hold dear at ABC is that artists are business owners. And in order to be an artist in 2025, you have to be a business owner. The artists actually face several challenges that are very similar to other bid members. And artists know that they have to be entrepreneurs, but they have limited structures in arts entrepreneurship education. And there's also, they're fighting this perception that like arts work isn't real work. So there's just a lot of skills gaps that are happening here. So bids can definitely come in and be supportive spaces for them in terms of education and connecting them to resources. And like many other industries, they do have uncertain demand and market need. And so they have to create their own markets and be able to communicate that to others. So this is all artists' information, but it does not touch on the incredible lack of financial investment in minority-owned businesses, which compound these challenges for creatives of color. There is also a natural, as I mentioned before, there's a natural alignment with CBDOs and their services as well as bids. So artists benefit from open streets and digital promotion programs. They rely upon bids and CBDOs to help identify locations for murals and public art projects. And then there's some retail space activations that can help young artists produce their first shows and generate interest with galleries. And some notes on that piece in terms of working with artists in retail activations. When you're working with artists, please remember to protect their intellectual property, meaning in the contracts, you should not say, I can use your image.
Those two gigs, because it's like.
So we're just gonna mute again. Thank you. So please do protect artists' intellectual property. You should not be using their artwork without permission. It should be in the contract that their artwork cannot be used without permission, even if you offer them space. And then there should be some discussion about how photos are handled as well. You should honor agreements for the space occupation because they're also business owners. And I know in some cases folks use retail space activations to sort of activate, to advertise the space or to enliven the space. But then, there's an employee, a purchaser or a renter who wants to come in and use the space because they can see how it's being used. You should honor your partnerships with those artists to make sure that they are that their agreement is also prioritized. You should create contracts that are fair, and if they're providing services or highlighting products, like compensate them fairly, and they should be able to tell you what that value is. And then be clear about why you want to have artists in the space. Artists are not there for decoration. They are also business owners. And this is an exchange. This is a partnership, an economic partnership. So please keep those things in mind. So there is a very clear mission alignment between economic development organizations and artists and the arts. Again, because artists are small business owners, there is a huge advocacy for small businesses within the arts community. It does encourage local spending. It celebrates local culture and tradition. It encourages entrepreneurship. Essentially, again, if you are an artist, you have to consider what you need to do to create a market for your services. So that's definitely an entrepreneurial priority. It drives commerce within local areas. It supports tourism. It does make communities more livable, more beautiful, and that definitely affects the property values. It affects the kinds of businesses that would want to move in, and it sort of creates a local vibe that is very valuable and supported by CBDOs. As I mentioned before, the arts contribute significantly to the economy, and they reflect the pride in the community. Finally, they spark innovation and creativity when folks are able to be in an environment that is beautiful and interesting and interactive. They are able to they're able to be more entrepreneurial, and it brings them back. So again, it drives commerce and supports tourism. And we are highlighting our first bid. So this is the, and look, I'm so sorry. I don't think, I lived in New York for 13 years, and I still don't know how to say this correctly, but I think it's Gansevoort, I think, landing a collaboration with the Whitney Museum, MDMA, TF Cornerstone, NYC DOT, and New York State DOT. They were able to do this wonderful placemaking activity. They commissioned a muralist who is local, a Lake Schilling, and and they might be a member of the bid, I believe. Please correct me if I get that incorrect in the chat. I love that they made this whimsical creation that supports tourism, and this is an example of placemaking such as like the Hollywood Stars or the Chicago Bean. And what I also love is that they are listing this on their website as a menu dropdown, so folks can sort of see that this is a priority for the bid. And then when I think about doing artist collaborations in general, there's a few things that you should just keep in mind so that, again, we're respecting artists as business owners and sort of developing that collaborative spirit. First, we should make sure that their IG or website is linked in every press release. That is really important so that the story, so that folks who are viewing those things can go back to the artist and maybe patronize the artist in other ways if they're selling artwork or if they have other activities. It's good to be able to link your partners. Ensure that you have rights to use images you take of the final product, ensure that they have the rights to use images that you take of the final product, because it's really, they want to put it on their website and advertise their activities and their partnerships. So it would really suck if like they weren't able to access these beautiful images that have been taken professionally of the work. And then also consider thanking them at community board meetings. Bids are usually quite active in their community boards. Or I guess if you're outside of New York, your local, I guess, lowest level of city government, making sure that you're highlighting the impact and the partnership with an artist can sort of again bring light to the importance of the arts in your placemaking activities. It builds a culture internally and across the commercial district area that artists are celebrated and respected as business owners. And so as we're talking about the arts and moving into arts funding, I wanted to just provide a lot of resources locally and nationally to make the case for arts funding as a CBDO. So the National Assembly of State Art Agencies has a creative economy state-by-state profile. So you can sort of look to see the makeup of that creative economy economically and tax impact wise. So that's really valuable. There is an annual cultural stat sheet from New Yorkers for the Arts that talks about employment as well. Americans for the Arts I'm not sure actually how often, but they regularly come out with arts and economic prosperity reports. They're on number 6. And so you can talk, like they go into multiple different areas of economic development and community well-being, community services, and make cases for how the arts supports all of those community-focused activities. And so they have a lot of resources available to be able to pull together your argument for why you should get funding to do this work in your CBDO. There's some really wonderful examples of how the Empire State Development Corporation and HUD funded arts-centered entrepreneurship programs. And there's also some federal agencies and projects that align with creative economic development. Now, I don't know really with the situations that's going on federally, I don't know if those are going to still be there, but it is just an example that that the government at different levels has in the past invested in arts economic development as a very specific program and thing. And then finally, I want to bring to your attention some of the resources that Arts Business Collaborative have put out in our research projects. We have a report that talks about funding the artists, funding arts using language that reflects community assets. The narratives that we use as we talk about our local communities and their needs should be more of an asset kind of asset forward presentation, and artists can be really helpful in identifying and communicating that your community is like has a significant number of intangible assets. And then we also have a report on creating equitable partnerships with arts businesses and artists. This is where we talk more about the labor issues that are raised with working with artists and the kinds of challenges that arts businesses are facing that can be really helpful for any kind of outreach that you might have to outreach that you might have to any funders. Yeah. So in sum, there's several ways that you can be building artistic community that are identified through call out profiles throughout the presentation, but also just more ideas. You can create a volunteer host committee for cultural events to extend the reach of your community engagement, because your community definitely wants to be involved in any kind of arts production activities. And so getting them directly involved in planning that can relieve you of some work, one, and then two, extend your circle of folks who can generate support. You can also highlight your local creatives on your website and in your materials as part of your tourism strategies. There are folks that do come from different places to buy artwork and to view the local arts community. So that can be being a welcome place for those people can definitely benefit your arts economic development activities. You can engage with artists to design interactive tourism experiences within your service area. I've seen before some, what are they called? Those QR tags that have been put on like local areas that can allow people to get more historical context for the big sites in those areas. And it can also make it possible for people to do VR experiences, virtual reality or augmented reality, to sort of be more, to have a lot more interaction with your community. So, and that's also a great way to highlight your sort of local heroes through those QR tags. You should also lean into your history and pull out the threads of cultural significance. There's been several bids that I'll highlight in the future, call outs that do that. And historic preservation is actually a strong draw for funding when it comes to foundation, and it used to be government, but I don't know. I don't know. But definitely foundation funders are interested in historic preservation as a goal for community economic development. And along those lines, I want to call out the Morris Park bid. They did a workshop with the Bronx artist Ruth Marshall, who conducted a workshop with the community to create artwork to support the butterfly and native habitat that is currently being preserved along the pedestrian walkway at the Hutchinson Metro Center in the Bronx. This is a great example of a relatively low-cost community engagement with artists, especially around ecological preservation, an issue that's important to your community area. Nature is a critical part of community beautification. So connecting this to an active preservation initiative is a great idea. They were funded by the Bronx Arts Council, which is a government-funded and well-respected entity within the arts community. And this funding can help launch them into greater foundation funding. So good on them for that. One thing that I would suggest that folks do is to keep track of your foundation and your government funders. in a funders list with each year in a different column and a color code that describes the program. It can help easily communicate increasing successful arts funding over time, and many funders like to see other funders first. Building upon the reputation of the funders that fund your arts programs can lead to long-term arts funding by a wide variety of partners. And as a CBDO, you already get, which we'll see coming up, a significant amount of government funding. And so just sort of extending into the arts areas can help you enter into more arts funding from the foundation side as well. And another really interesting example of environmentally focused artist engagement. This is not an, like the NYC Urban Field Station is not a CBDO, but it is really helpful to sort of, to think about environmental preservation and the arts integration. So this is the Trees of New York by Katie Holton. It is, each letter of the Latin alphabet is assigned a drawing of a tree from New York City Parks Department's existing native and non-native trees, as well as species that are to be planted as a result of the changing climate. So this definitely brings a lot of conversation. It is a great way to develop a long-term relationship with artist communities. Having an artist in residence like program particularly can align their artwork with concerns of your constituencies. And this kind of artwork can shine a light on the limited tree cover, for example, in different areas of your district. One example, because Long Island City Partnership is our bid, they could partner with this artist and communicate the limited tree cover in, say, the Blissville section of Long Island City, and generate funds to increase tree plantings to offset the increasingly dangerous floodwaters as a result of climate change. And so this is how we're sort of linking priorities of community organizations, like neighborhood associations, bids, and residents, and I'm in our case, community board priorities as well. So the arts economic development is a very versatile way to think through. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Well, arts economic development is a versatile way to cover all of your constituencies' needs and make sure that you're aware and able to communicate externally all of those challenges. Yes. Great. Yes, we're so glad that you're here to see the shout outs. We have lots of shout outs, so they will keep coming. Okay, so now we should think about how we prepare to integrate arts funding. We understand why community economic development or arts economic development is aligned with your work, and some examples of how that has worked successfully. Let's get into how we prepare for the arts funding. So I'm coming from this point of view as if one does not know anything about this, so that this can be a very comprehensive baseline information resource. So this is the overview of arts funding from the SMU, Southern Methodist University Data Arts Project. And so they have a comprehensive data set of funding for different types of arts organizations and the arts sector as a whole. And you can click on the funding source charts in the slides as well. And you should note that as a practice within Department of Cultural Affairs, every arts organization who applies for money needs to fill this out and show that they have filled this out. As we are looking at the different types of organizations, CBDOs would be best suited for the community section. And you'll also note that opera, music, and dance have the most moneyed trustees. But the three most common types of organizations are opera, music, and community. CBDOs, as I said, would be best counted under the community section, and that can also be seen in the greatest amount of government investment. There is a lot of funding opportunity available, primarily through individual and foundation funding, but corporations are most likely to give to community arts organizations comparatively. Also, you'll note that there is a lot of competition, meaning that community is the second or third, depending on how you want to read it, highest number of organizations. Whenever we think about competition, when it comes to arts funding, we have to think about, we can't just be thinking about like, this is the supply and there is this huge amount of demand. These people have plenty of money. The foundations, if the corporations particularly, they have plenty of money. So please do not shy away from sharing funders or partnering with others, because honestly, we are all made more powerful in coalition. There's no reason that one should forego opportunity. We found out during the pandemic that people can go deeper into their pockets. And when I say people, I mean the entities, foundations, and corporations, primarily. And some, I mean, look, if you're looking at a billionaire, like, they can go deeper too. Let's be clear. So this is an overview of arts funding across the different sizes. So small is less than 250,000, medium is 250,000, and large is 250,000 to $1 million. And hold on. See, it's a typo. I apologize. It should be medium is 250,000 to $1 million, and then large is more than 2 million. So you'll see that there are a significantly more like small and medium size organizations than there are large size arts organizations. And this is very common across the nonprofit sector. 75% of arts organizations are 250,000 and under. So we should keep that in mind as well. And then this is support markets across the country. As I shared before, New York City invests significantly in its arts community compared to other areas. There is a lot more government funding, and shout out to DCLA, the Department of Cultural Affairs, for anyone outside of New York City. They are the GOAT. However, individuals and foundations are comparatively less generous. And there are three reasons like why this is the case. One, there's 8.5 million people in New York City, and there are a lot of low and median income people, and so that's going to skew the data when we think about like individual funding. Two, there is a lot of national foundations in New York City that give a lot of funding to other markets. So it looks like there's less foundation funding here. And then the New York City government invests a lot in the arts. So therefore, like the other funding sources look smaller than other funding sources in other areas. So this is just some pointers on how to like look at this data when you're talking about arts funding. And so we should think about the different kinds of, so the priority kinds of funding that are the best opportunities for CBDOs in the arts in New York City are individuals, foundations, and corporations. And there's, I've put together just like a very quick list of types of funding programs and their potential infrastructure needs, so that folks can sort of get a snapshot of what that looks like, and maybe if they've seen that at other places, or even within their organization, but they're raising funds for economic development rather than for arts. So for the individuals, the funding programs can be monthly, recurring giving, it can be major gifts, and major gifts can be anything. It can be any level depending upon the organization. Planned gifts, which are people including the organization in their insurance, beneficiaries or their bequests, or there's also some annuities and other sort of complex giving vehicles that are associated with individuals doing estate planning. There is event giving, there are annual memberships. And so there's lots of ways that you can engage with this that makes sense with your organization's existing structure. And there are several potential infrastructure needs depending upon which programs you might want to institute. A CRM is going to be critical for any of them, honestly. Customer relationship management system. You need to have a mailing list with some conversion targets. And when we say conversion, I mean getting them to do the thing that you want them to do. So sometimes it's click on this thing, and sometimes it's make a donation. So you need to have a mailing list that you have goals for all the people on your mailing list, and segment it accordingly. A portfolio management system. So with your major gifts, with your planned gifts, having your a portfolio, a person who manages a portfolio of potential funders can be really helpful in making sure that you're moving them through your getting to know your organization in a systematic way, so that when it comes time to make those asks, like you've got a group of people who are ready to go. Basic prospect research process. which we define that later in the presentation, but just like what it is, all the information that you need to know about like their previous giving, their interests, what areas of the city that they are, that they live in, so that you can sort of learn more about their likelihood to support your activities. A donor screening software, which we talk about that later as well. Solicitation and training materials, meaning solicitation is the process of asking for funds. And so you might need to do that training for your directors of your organization, your executive director, if they're not a fundraiser, your board members could be involved in that, any legal agreements with these complex planned gifts. So there's a lot of things here. With foundations, it's really just one like funding program. It's just the foundation grants, and then the infrastructure you would need, aside from what you already currently have, is potentially a grant writer familiar with the arts, and or government agencies that engage with the arts. Corporations funding programs can be a lot or a little amount of work. Corporate volunteer opportunities, you can have folks come in and do something that's valuable and useful to your organization. You can have a junior board. You can have a host committee, as I mentioned previously, for any kind of like activity outreach or for bid member outreach. And that might need an internal person to manage your junior board or volunteer opportunities. So more than likely adding to somebody else's existing job, a sponsorship deck, a list of potential marketing and or naming opportunities. Some corporations enjoy like having a named series or something, and they expect that come along with higher donation amounts. So you can see that the foundation grants have the fewest barriers to entry, and some corporations have corporate foundations. So the process of getting those funds is essentially foundation grant writing. And so I want to shout out my local bid. Sunnyside Community, Sunnyside Shines has a Sunnyside Community Cultural Initiative at Bliss and Lowry Plaza. They're doing arts activations with live music and dance entertainment. And also, please don't miss Sunny Pride in June. I was a part of the initial Sunny Pride. They have been doing this great activation of plazas under the 7 train. This has been a priority for the city to make those spaces more relevant to the community, as opposed to just being like, I don't know, parking lots, right? Like there's this is a community space that can be activated well. This has been especially the case since COVID. During the Sunny Pride, they have a march from Lowry Plaza to Bliss Plaza. And they've done that for the last 3 years. They feature local dancers and musicians. They created a hub at Bliss Plaza where performances took place alongside like small business vending. So folks were able to get to know their local businesses, and the bid members were able to participate. They had the borough president and our council member, and they honored a Queens trans organization, Glitz, at, I believe, the second Sunny Pride. Was it the second or was it the first? I can't quite remember because I was involved in both of them. But this is a great example of a small bid making a big impact. Fundraising wise, they were very well connected and engaged with other community, with their community board. So definitely see your community board as a potential group of people, different, putting together a group of people to be your sort of outreach, group support. They signed up to be, many board members signed up to be on the host committee, including me. We had outreach to small businesses that was through the volunteer host committee, and outreach from the bid resulted in enough funds raised to provide a grant to our honoree. And the event paid for itself in the first year. So this doesn't, arts economic development doesn't have to cost you. They're also a great example of getting small corporate contributions and in-kind donations, and that can also be added to your fundraising strategy. And shout out to DOT for paying the artists. They had a great relationship with DOT and still have a great relationship. And so this is something that you should also take advantage of and engage your local arts community, and align it with city agency priorities. And so now we're going to take a 5-minute break, so we can rest, we can rejuvenate, and we'll come back for our crash course in foundation. So I'm gonna start that now. All right. We are back from our 5-minute break. Just a quick reminder to put any questions you might have in the chat, and we will definitely address it in the upcoming Q&A. So we will be doing a CBDO business model deep dive. And that will help us sort of put the business models in context with the funding opportunity available. So we had an overwhelming number of bids that signed up for this this presentation. So I wanted to make sure to specifically pull out bids as an entity. There were so many different kinds of other CBDOs. So it was hard to get a read from the financials of non-bids. So they're kind of clumped together. And I apologize if that may make this somewhat inaccurate, but that's sort of how I approach this data. So you can see that in both CBDOs, or sorry, the business improvement districts and other CBDOs, a large portion, 71 to 75%, is government funding. The assessment is as far as I understand, is a tax assessment. And so that is a government thing, or at least it's dispersed through the government. And then there's pretty similar alignment or portions of funding that's coming from foundations, 17 and 18%. And then corporate for bids is 3%. And then other, which includes earned revenue. It can be interest on investments or other such things. It's 5%. For other CBDOs, they have a significant, comparatively significant amount of earned revenue, and then other services and activities is 4%. This is really important to point out that during emergencies or potential economic downturn, foundation funders tend to stay with their existing grantees rather than new ones. And so that's kind of a double-edged sword. So if you have those foundation partnerships already, then great. Like you should reach out to them and make sure that, they don't have any additional funds or, something of that nature. Sometimes they cancel their grant cycle so that they can give greater funds to their existing grantees. And so having that relationship can be essential to helping you make up any dips in income that could occur with any government cuts, lower property values that might affect your assessment or assessment methodology changes. On the other hand, if you are not getting a significant amount of foundation funding, this can be a time of difficulty to get those to get in the door with those foundations. So just keeping that in mind about how the CBDO landscape is sort of set up in New York right now. Oops, sorry, too many things. Okay, so I want to do an activity with the chat. So I would love for folks to be able to share their sort of risk factors and challenges associated with their unique organizations' business models. if you like share any questions you might have, and we will comment on the risks and challenges and answer any questions in our upcoming handbook, fundraising handbook for CBDOs. So this is an opportunity to share with others. Maybe you'll find that folks have similar like risk factors and challenges that they're thinking about when they look at the makeup of the income for their CBDO. So just give you, I'll give you a minute to do that. Okay, well, it seems like there's no one who wants to share, which is completely fine. You're also welcome to share any thoughts or questions via email. I'll share my email at the end of the presentation. Oh, go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, hi. I guess I wasn't sure if this was appropriate. I mean, I did ask you a question earlier,
Okay.
and it is relevant, but I don't know if maybe it'll be more appropriate later on the call. I do have to hop off early, so I was just wondering if your organization or if you have any references on where we can find an example of a contract to have with artists or performers that we hire. Since the Open Streets program has expanded, but funding has decreased, and organizations like mine, which is a CBDO, experiences cash flow issues. Like it's tricky for us to come up with a contract as far as like payment plan, timing, and also be able to come up with the amounts that like make sense for the particular art and artist. Like we've kind of just been doing our best at winging it and figuring out, but we realize that we need to formalize this and we're kind of lost. We haven't really done something like that before.
Sure. Yeah, so we have some examples of contracts that we've had with artists. It really does depend upon what kind of activity you're trying to do. So if you're activating a physical location, like in a retail space, like that would be a different kind of contract. I suggest reaching out to other CBDOs who we've highlighted in this presentation and see how they've structured their contracts with their artists. And I'm also happy to reach out to each one that I've highlighted and sort of put together a sort of summary of what I've seen in the different contracts. If obviously keeping confidentiality at the forefront. But yeah, I think that how an artist prices their work is very unique to the artist and very unique to the work.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know for me as an artist, I'm looking at like my cost of living, my daily cost of living, and also the cost of materials. And so I have this complex calculation that I use to be able to say, okay, I put this many hours in, here's the cost of materials, and this is my like daily living cost, and this is how many days that I participated in this activity. And so that's how I would price price my artwork, and I'm a printmaker and digital media artist. So, but I'm not a muralist, right? And so things are very different. You should also consider if you're doing mural work, the insurance requirements for, and how that's going to be covered, because that needs to be put within the budget. I think I will also I'll reach out to other CBDOs as well and make a like template budgets for those different activities. And that might be helpful in sort of answering the question about the contracts, and then the considerations around the contracts, and then the larger like size of the project, the cost of the project.
Right.
Would that be helpful for you?
Yeah, that would be, as you know, like I said, especially because sometimes we work with, all the artists we work with are professional artists, but some really it's their career. For others, it's a side work. For others, we explain at the front, this is all we have as a budget, and then they're, for them, they're still willing to perform or do an activity because they want the exposure and, like, support the organization. But yeah, we do kind of want to make sure that we remain consistent, and yeah, so that would be helpful. Any guidance in formalizing it would be good, because every year we're kind of like, oh, we want to make this fair and equitable across the board.
Absolutely. I would also suggest reaching out to Long Island City Partnership, because they have done a lot of transportation grants and transportation. The Department of DOT has paid for several mural projects.
Right.
And they would be able to give you a sort of maybe history of how artists have been paid in Long Island City.
Okay.
Anyone else can just come off mute.
I'm sure. Yeah, I was trying to word it in the chat, but and hopefully this is also related. But coming from the other end, we're a dance company, and we work with a lot of artists at a time. So we have live music and a fairly large ensemble. So regularly at community events, regularly when we're invited to community events, there's more of a budget that seems to make sense for a smaller group, let's say, and just would be interested in any tips to kind of like feel out what the budgets are for folks who are looking for artist or placemaking, kind of before we get further down the road and for a folks' time. And then also if there are like supplemental opportunities that you might add in to, or suggest that like both the presenter and maybe the artist could, kind of raise for folks to look at. Again, for keeping in mind that usually what happens is, we're just kind of on a higher end beyond what the budget allows.
Right. Right. Okay, so just to summarize what you said, it's what do you do when you are on the higher end of the budget? And then 2, are there resources available for determining the pricing and the budget fit? Was that the second?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're on the higher end of the pricing, I would suggest, as a professional fundraiser myself, like, you as an arts organization have had a lot of experience raising funds for arts. So at this point, it would be worth working with your CBDOs and sort of saying, okay, so like let's co-write this grant, or let's approach this funder together. And then they can sort of put in their sort of community development goals as part of the grant, and then you can also just write in your costs. And that's a way that you can sort of collaboratively have a larger engagement beyond just a contracted work. I think that you know, one of the other I believe one of the other one of the folks that we shouted out actually had artists in residence. And so that kind of a model, I don't, did I say that before? Okay, I guess I may not have put that here, but there is, I think doing an artist in residence model might be a better fit for you rather than doing a sort of like one-off activities, so that you can have like a more stable relationship and a more comprehensive one that is planned for within the programming. And then the models for, wait, did I answer those questions? I'm sorry, like the ADHD is doing its thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. And we sort of said, oh, I guess, is that what we'll need to do? So you've sort of confirmed kind of a gut of, you know, it seems like we'll just have to like kind of take the longer route, because for a lot of relationships that we'd like to build, and you know, every year we kind of strike out with, you know, with funding. So just kind of investing there. We're super small and don't really have the arm for fundraising necessarily, but seeing that it's a priority.
Well, and the other thing is that you can, I mean, the CBDOs, you can approach them and say, hey, we want to help you, like in terms of the language for this grant writing, we want to work with you. So like, it's you having that language and experience is still valuable, is what I'm sort of getting at.
Super helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Angel. LICP is really awesome. I'm just saying that because I'm so biased because they're ours. So ABCs. So we rely upon them for a lot of support, and they are very well appreciated at the community board. Okay, so let's move on. And again, if you have, I think Carolyn put my email in the chat. If you have any additional questions or concerns, like please reach out. And you know, with your permission, I would love to put those kind of questions and thoughts in the handbook that we're going to be releasing in May. Okay, so oh, my notes disappeared. 1 minute. Okay, so I want to sort of frame why it's important for us to do like a crash course in foundation grant seeking. It is important as if you're a program staff member to help you make the case about for the programming that you want to do with creative communities, to make sure that you can make this actionable when you're talking to your fundraising staff. And there's all kinds of different kinds of CBDOs here, and this can be really helpful for you to think strategically about how you move yourself in that direction, and also pull from the examples that we highlight. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first part of it is prospecting. And prospecting is, well, first, a prospect is a potential donor, and prospect research or prospecting is the process of identifying a target donor or audience, analyzing their capacity for giving, and their interest in the organization. there are two kinds of, I sort of say, like, there's high tech and there's low tech prospecting. Low tech is, meaning like you don't have a large budget, you can still do this work. There's a lot of public information available. So if you have any like grantor highlights from newsletters, from other organizations, they might say, thank you to our funder XYZ who allowed us to do this thing. That's very helpful in terms of pulling together your list. There's interpersonal suggestions. Somebody says, oh, there's this grant that's available, you should apply, which shameless shout out, ABC has a grant. We provide $2,500 for capacity building through help desk. So if you registered via the registration form on our website, it includes a grant consideration section where you can apply for this grant. It is to be used not for programs, it is to be used to like pay your staff or like get that marketing, platform that you needed, or whatever that like keeps you going. That's what that is for. Do not spend it on more programs, because we need to make sure that we as leaders are also caring for ourselves. Okay, so yes, interpersonal suggestions are an option. You can also look at peer organizations. They have donor listings usually in their annual reports or sponsorship events. And a peer organization is someone with a similar mission or a similar program, a structure, or an industry. So you might say, I'm going to look at other bids that are of this size, or I'm going to look at other organizations that provide community beautification programs. Like that's what you would be looking at here. And then there is there's a high-tech version of this if you have access to a budget. Foundation Directory Online, I think it's $300 a year. I think I will follow up and share that. And that allows you to do searches. You can look at other people who, you can sort of do what you do in the low tech, but it's like a search engine. So other people who've gotten funds in your like peer organizations, you can see who funded them. And this is usually pulled from the 990s, the tax returns of the foundations. So this is how they know. It is not comprehensive. No research platform can really be that comprehensive, because there's ways in which people like hide who they give money to. And foundations will sometimes just not give you their list of grantees in their 990, because that's not required to be public. There are also churches that give grants, and churches do not have to have a transparent 990. Grant Station also is an option. They're relatively low cost. I don't know how much that is. And let's speed up. And then there's Instrumental. Instrumental is the very expensive. It's like $250 per month. So that's a thing. That's an option. One thing you should also remember is that banks have a legal responsibility to provide funding to their local areas. The areas where they do business, they provide that funding via loans, or they provide it via grants. It's called the Community Reinvestment Act. So that is where you can access regional officers and local branch managers to be able to inquire as to how much in sponsorship and or grant funds that you can apply for. The second level is the qualification, and that's just that's prioritizing the donors, and make sure that your processes are aligned with what those donors what those donors, what they need. So you should be asking yourself some questions. So one, should we pursue this partner? Positive points are if they were funded by a peer organization, do you fit their stated or deduced interests? And when you say deduce, it's like looking at their 990 or any like research technology. You can learn about where their dollars actually went, as opposed to what they say they went to, because oftentimes it's not the same. And how to read a 990 will be covered in our handbook. And then how much you should ask for, how much did your peer organization get? What is the most often gift to your category of funding of organization? What is the range? So if you can learn the leanings of a funder before they, rewind. This helps you understand where they were at that time. And looking at multiple years can help you learn the leanings of a funder before they formally shift or learn what they're moving away from. Their communications can help you decide whether they are a good partner. So you should sign up for mailing lists or talk to them directly. Then the next section is inquiry and conversation. The purpose of this is to confirm your alignment and the timing of the application, request an opportunity to share about the organization, answer any questions about your programming. You would want to sort of follow a general process of sending an email, maybe do a phone call follow-up if there's no response, try to get a meeting, and then there's a written LOI or application, a letter of inquiry, and the kind of information at every step that you're trying to gather is some really basic stuff. When the funding deadlines, what's the size of the grants? What does your reporting look like? The information that you want to share is also critical to prioritize. So what community needs do you specifically meet, and why are you best positioned to do so? And what drives the program's impact. And they might ask things like, what's your fiscal year and your budget? And why, what other funders have you had? So that's why that funders list that I mentioned previously is really, really helpful. When you're sending emails, so a few tips on this. When you're sending emails, Google has a read receipt functionality within it, so you can turn that on so you can see if they read the email. What you should when you're reaching out to funders, their job is to give money, and maybe it's not to give it to you per se, but it is to give money. So be persistent and keep following up. Try to get that meeting so that they will you're able to really make the case. If they say no unsolicited applications or letters of inquiry, that's not a problem, because you can still email. An email is not a letter of inquiry. You can still ask for a conversation, and sometimes that will get you through. We are going to be including a funder call strategy with timestamps in the handbook. So that will sort of help you move through this process easier. Okay. There is a sort of general grants time that you should keep in mind. Grants are not quick, they take time. And it is, you're often in a hurry up and wait mode. So this is how so there's the research and inquiry time. Then within one month to 6 to 12 months, you're hoping to get a meeting. within 13 months, you're hoping to get a letter of inquiry. Within 15 months, you're hoping to get an application, and in 18 months, you're hoping to get a decision. So it can take you 6 to 18 months to actually get the funding. I've defined a letter of inquiry here. RFP is request for proposal. That's often what they use to solicit the letters of inquiry. And then I suggest that you use projections to ensure you're teeing yourself up for results every single quarter. And when I say that, I mean you should do a rubric, and for when you're seeking funding, and that rubric can help inform a sort of projections document. And so this is what we use to standardize our funding search across the people across different people in case of like staffing changes. And we can train volunteers to know what we're looking for, including your board members. Sometimes they don't really understand or realize like how valuable a contact could be to the organization. And this can sort of help them prioritize that. So the first item is the relationship. The stronger the relationship with a staff member, and or with a board member, and if it's like a program officer, that makes it more likely that you can get a positive result. Then whether they've previously funded you or not. Sometimes, you know, if you're an organization that's been there for a long time, for like decades, then you might look back and say, oh, there's all these previous funders. Like, I wonder why we didn't continue. But because they funded you in the past, they're more likely to fund you in the future. And so on that continuum is, you know, whether they funded a peer or a similar genre, or if they didn't fund any, or if they funded like a similar kind of program. Okay, and then you need to look at the geographic priorities. I tend to try to like look for folks who are really interested in the specific area, because the smaller the area, the greater likelihood you are to get the funds, because there's physically fewer people that are being considered. And so anything that's focused on like New York City specifically would be a great option to apply for funding. And then because ABC is national, we also focus on the Midwest and Northeast. And so this can help you decide whether it's a long shot or not. And then finally, the funder content priorities. So for ABC, we are focused on small business, technical assistants, adults, women. The majority of the people that we are serving within our programs, not on purpose, but by incident, is our women, girls, trans femmes. We are a fiscal sponsor, an incubator. So these are all the things that like are the most aligned with us. And as you get fewer endpoints, it's less specific. And this is like, it's important to think about your programs and your organization in keywords, and that helps make this rubric creation a lot easier. Okay, and so all this is to say, there is a language alignment piece that is really important in converting and getting economic development into the arts. So when you're talking about some of the things that you actually do as a CBDO, streetscape beautification, sanitation, marketing, and tourism, this is creative placemaking. This is why so many other of your peer bids have creative placemaking on their website. when you're thinking about neighborhood revitalization, housing, downtown revitalization, this is historic preservation. And as I said before, there's specific funding for that. If you're doing district advocacy or voter registration, this is civic education and engagement. Lots of arts are involved in civic education. And so that might help you in terms of positioning yourself for funding within an arts funder. If you're doing worker organizing or job placement, that is creative workforce development. And the same with technical assistance, that's creative business education. I guess if you really want to like add creative in front, I guess you're good in terms of changing the alignment. But this is very helpful for when you're searching for funding opportunities. You can kind of use these keywords. And these are all not like mutually exclusive, but they're a starting place to think about the programming and the context of the arts. Technically, like if you're doing marketing and tourism, it could also be historic preservation. Or it could be, it could be creative workforce development. But like, this is the sort of general way to look at this. And then also just another note on civic engagement. The civic education, like this alludes to the role that the arts and culture has played in moving the Overton window on acceptable social conditions. And when we're talking about economic development, we're also talking about the social and material realities of the people who live there. So we're highlighting another wonderful bid, the Women's Housing and Economic Development Corporation, WEDCO. They have a Bronx Music Heritage Center as a cultural hub and performance venue at the heart of the residential development in the Melrose neighborhood. So this is amazing. They are creating a tourist destination and greater ties to an industry who could help fund programming. Their drop down on their website is creative place affirming, which is also really wonderful because it's acknowledging that like they are not in conflict with the historical context of their environment. And it's honoring their community past and present. And like they should have no problem raising funds for arts and historic preservation. I would suggest that because they have a physical location within a development, that they should seek museum funding, especially if you have memorabilia and cultural artifacts. And definitely look out for archives funding. Mellon just completed an RFP on collections. They were looking for all over the country archives. And so this would be a really good option if you had that, memorabilia and such. And then this is also very well suited for national foundation funding because of the national impact of the community. It's literally the place of the birth of hip hop. The organization looking for archive is Andrew Mellon Foundation. Yes. Okay. So as we are looking at the sort of rubric, the way that you might judge it is this point system. And this likelihood modifier is like based upon like you're more or less likely to get the funding. And the 25% and the minus 25%, the 0% will make sense in a minute. Okay, so there are other unique modifiers that could change the number of points that you're appointing to this, I guess, so that you can really have an objective view about whether this is a strong partner opportunity for you or not, or a likely partner. If say you are $1 million in budget, and they say, okay, well, we prioritize organizations that are 500 or less. Yeah, like that's probably something that's going to limit your likelihood, right? So then I, remove a point. If they say no unsolicited requests, they are very likely to be unresponsive, even if you try to email, but you can still try. I mean, I've gotten funds to folks who have no unsolicited requests. It means more that you have to do a lot more groundwork, like look at an existing grantee and hope that you can work with them to get an introduction to that funder so that there's a sort of entree into their world. Sometimes they say they have a funding program on hold because they're doing strategic planning. So they're obviously like not a good fit for you right now because if they are doing any funding, then it's going to be severely restricted. Okay, so this is where all of this comes together. Say you're requesting $75,000 in Q1 of 2025 from fictitious foundation. You are at a letter of inquiry. So you've sent a funding inquiry, an email. They say apply for like they maybe send you a generic thing that says, our LOI is due here. Okay, fine. So the stage of the LOI is 15%, which I will explain a little bit more in the next slide. And then the likelihood multiplier that we went through, say it's a 7. So now it's in the reasonable. So you're not more or less likely to get this. It's 50-50 basically. So then I multiply the request that I'm asking by the added together stage multiplier. And that's what helps me make a projection. Considering that you could have a lot of different ways, like you could have really good relationships and still be at like application, and that's 50%. That's a conservative estimate of how much money is coming. And then you can align it to the fiscal year, the designation, which is like the specific area where the funding is supposed to go. And then you can identify the funding stream. So then in this way, you can then organize a whole spreadsheet that can say, okay, so halfway through the year, our projected income for foundations is $450,000. And that is $50,000 above our budgeted fiscal year, our budgeted amount in our fiscal year. So like, we're good, right? It gives you some like ability to see how you're doing throughout the year. And that helps prevent you from having a freak out later. Okay, and so when I say stage, these are the percentages that I have associated with that. And these percentages are sort of like the percentage, like the likelihood that you will get a pledge of saying, we are going to give you this money. Sometimes after inquiry and conversation, like out of the blue, they're just kind of like, yeah, we're going to give you this money. Like, here's a grant, here's a pledge, or they'll send you an email saying, we would like to award you this money after having a conversation with you. It's very rare, but it does happen. So that's why it's 10%. Say they got an LOI from you and they don't need an application and they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Here's the money. 8%. In application invited. So you've applied, you've done the LOI and you're applying, then that would be a 25%. If you submitted, 50-50. And if you're awarded, then they have made a pledge, so it's 100%. So this is how I, like, it's helpful to identify where you are in the seeking of funds for your program. And so then whatever budget you have, if you're applying for this program for for the next fiscal year, say your fiscal year ends in June, then you would be able to say, okay, at the beginning of the fiscal year, here's how far we are. And I also want to point out another wonderful bid doing great work. The Flatiron Nomad Partnership. They have a Start with Love, Flatiron Nomad Pride temporary art installation that celebrates its important role as the starting line for the iconic NYC Pride March. This is cultural engagement for both queer culture and historic preservation purposes. So those are two areas that you can receive funding for. They have an RFP for an artist. So shout out to them. Check out their website if you know of any artists that might be interested. And then they are, please feel free to, if you're here, to put the link in the chat so that we can, so that other people can learn about what you've got going on. Okay, so finally, we are at the end. Okay, questions to consider. These are some things that you should think about when you are identifying the funding stream that would work best with your arts program. What funding streams match your program needs, both financially and outcome-wise? Say it's getting more corporate involvement in your activities. It might make sense to do corporate funding and then do volunteering, right? What existing capacity do you have to meet the infrastructure requirements for individuals, corporations, or foundation funding? You can see that like some of them, there's definitely different like investment amounts, financial investment amounts for the different kinds of funding. And then how would your funding mix change during economic downturn or if the funding shifted? That's something to be considering nowadays. But yeah, like if you get a lot of government funding and that funding is endangered, like how are you going to continue to fulfill your mission? Finally, there's some more things that we would suggest you check out. This actually needs to be updated since there was since this was postponed. So this will actually be the fiscal sponsorship and movement organizing will be next Monday, so April 14th. And then finance skills you need to know as an executive director will be April 21st. There will be as I mentioned throughout this, there's a full fundraising handbook in May. You'll be learning how to read Foundation 990. You'll be learning how to create a grant calendar, cultivation planning for institutional funders, institutional giving, corporate and individual measurable goals and metrics, how to design these corporate engagement opportunities, funder cultivation and outreach templates, guides to recurring giving, so much, even stuff for your board. So please stay tuned for that. And this will be specifically tailored to community based development organizations and their best strategies. So thank you. Appreciate y'all. And there's my email.
All right, Kat. Thank you so much. And yes, Layla just asked in the chat, these slides and recording of this presentation will be sent along to you within the next couple of days. Keep a lookout for that in your inbox. You will get it. Wanted to also shout out some upcoming SBS events. there's an MWBE certification webinar happening this Wednesday, and 2 more workshops from my team, one next Monday in partnership with Lawyers Alliance for New York, and one at the end of this month with Community Resource Exchange. I will be sending up links for those in the chat right now. You can always check out the SBS Eventbrite for more workshops like this. And if you have just a minute or two, fill out our feedback survey. You can scan the QR code on the screen or use the link that I just dropped in the chat. This will be emailed to you as well. Going through this quickly, so we give everybody their time back. This was great. Thank you so much, Kat. This was so much valuable information. Again, you will all get access to the slides. I encourage you to reference back to them. ABC put in so much valuable information and references in there. Really encourage you to take a look at them. Thank you so much, everyone.